My name is George Whitesides, and I am very pleased to have you all here for such a wonderful lunch that we're about to experience and that we are experiencing. I think we've had a fantastic morning so far, and I really want to recognize the speakers that we've got here, Alex and Shannon and Dawn. Let's just give a big round of applause for a great morning. It's also, as always, a great pleasure to recognize the space travelers, the other space travelers in the audience, and so just wanted to recognize Rusty Schweikert for being here today. I don't think there are any other space travelers, but if, I guess we all are to a certain extent, I really want to thank our sponsor for today's lunch. That's Wiley Laboratories and Vern McDonald in particular. Thank you so much for sponsoring today. We're looking forward to a great talk, and Wiley, of course, is doing some really exciting things, has been for a while, but doing some really exciting things in the intersection with commercial human spaceflight, and so that's an exciting new area where new interesting things are happening, building on an extensive heritage, of course, in the past. So please join me in recognizing Wiley Labs. We had a really wonderful event yesterday, actually, and I think these very rooms, and it was a symposium on space venture finance, and the idea behind it was to bring together the next generation of entrepreneurs with people with money, broadly speaking, of various flavors and types. And it was really a great success. I think many of you were there, and it really brought together new people, which is always what we're seeking to do with these events, is to bring together new constituencies, different constituencies, with the idea that as space grows and develops, those new connections lead to new projects and new developments, and so that was really great. And the reason that I raise it is because one of the major parts of the success of that event is here, and is going to introduce our next speaker. And that person is Esther Dyson, who led just a really wonderful panel at the end of the day connecting angel investment. Steve Fleming is also here, with the reality of the entrepreneurial space world. And of course, we recognized Esther for being really a leader in this area of that intersection and bringing her personal renown to the issues of entrepreneurial spaceflight. So join me in recognizing Esther Dyson, please.
Hi, good afternoon. I am lucky enough to get to introduce Eric because I was also lucky enough to be one of the people on a Space Adventures launch tour, which was the people who accompany everybody going to watch Charles Simony go into space in April. I'm also an investor in Space Adventures, and Eric's going to talk about how wonderful it was from his point of view, or from Charles's point of view. I'm going to talk for 1 minute about how great it was from my point of view. But it's worth pointing out that Space Adventures is a commercial company. They're trying to make money. They have investors like me and other larger investors. And it's that kind of energy and enthusiasm and profit motive that's going to make everything fly. So just to tell you a little bit about Eric, I'm not going to give you his bio, but he's the guy who runs the company that made everything look easy. The Russian Space Agency tries to make the launch look easy, but I spent an awful lot of time in Russia. I've never been on a tour or a trip or anything that went as smoothly as our trip from Moscow to Space City to Baikonur and back. Also, if you'd ever told me I was going to be on an airplane at 1:30 a.m. in the morning and interested in being in a party, I would never have believed it. And I don't know how many of you were there to hear about Don Pettit and his teammate with no backup toothbrush. I was in the same position when my luggage got lost on the way to Baikonur, and the Space Adventure staff hustled around and found a toothbrush for me. So I'd like you to welcome Eric Anderson, who's going to tell you about the fun part and the in front of the scenes part, maybe a little bit of the behind the scenes of Charles Simony launches. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Esther. Glad you enjoyed it. Actually, the program says that I'm supposed to talk about going to the moon, but I'm not going to talk about going to the moon in my presentation. I'm going to tell you about our most recent space traveler, who, as you probably, most of you know, is Charles Simony. And it's probably the biggest event in private space travel in the last couple of months, so it should be interesting. And actually, Charles is a Forbes billionaire. He's listed on the Forbes list of the world's wealthiest people, and he is actually the first billionaire in space. So there's a lot of us who are trying to get billionaires interested in space, and all the folks who are out there with big investors raising money and doing such exciting things. This is a good example. So there are those people, and they do want to go. They are, even though they have such valuable things on Earth, they're still willing to risk it and go to space, which I think is great. And Charles had a fantastic time while he was in space, and he has been very actively talking about the fact that the trip exceeded his expectations, and that he just had a wonderful time, and who knows, maybe he wants to go back one day. And that's very exciting, that's very fulfilling. So he's been very complimentary about space adventures, about the industry, about the whole idea of commercial space travel. All of us, all the projects that we're working on, have been very supportive, and hopefully will in the future. What was, in fact, one of the objectives of his mission was to help promote civilian space travel all across the board, which I thought was great. So I will tell you in pictures a little bit about his mission, but before that, I would like to show a video, just a short 2 or 3 minute video that was made that has some highlights from what's gone on over the past few months leading up to the flight.
We just arrived, and I'm just blown away.
Welcome to ISS.
I think the space station is just a fantastic place to live. That has not been attached correctly.
So I hope you enjoyed that. That's a lot of fun. Before I start and walk you through Charles's mission and what he did to prepare for the flight, and then around the launch time, and then a couple of pictures from the space flight, I would just like to say that for all of us who are in the commercial spaceflight business, there wouldn't be a business unless people actually agreed to go to space and not just talk about it, but do it. And so I would like to thank Charles, and I would also like to thank all of the other potential and future customers of all of the companies who are going to go to space. How many of you are in the room, by the way, people who've signed up for a space flight of any type? Good. Fantastic. We need you, and you're really the difference. We wouldn't have investors who are willing to put up money to build new vehicles and to do exciting things if people weren't actually willing to go. And that is an obvious fact, but we get a lot of thanks for trying to do the hard things on the technology side and as a business, but the real thanks goes to the customers. And so from all of us, I really want you to know that this is opening up space is something that you are enabling. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about Charles's flight. Let's see if, can I get the power? Here we go. Okay. So this is the crew. As many of you know, these flights to the International Space Station take place aboard Soyuz rockets. The Soyuz TMA spacecraft is the latest spacecraft that we use, and it carries 3 people, 2 of whom are professionals, and the third is a private citizen. The 2 crew members flying with Charles on this flight were Oleg Kotov and Fyodor Yurchikhin. Oleg in the middle and Fyodor on the right. And so they will both be on the space station for 6 months, and Charles was on the space station for about 11 days. Actually, his flight set a record. He was the longest flying private space traveler. All the previous folks who've flown were in the 9 or 10 day range, and he was up there for 13 days total. He got to stay a couple extra days on the space station. And so that was a big deal. And but anyway, those guys stay there a lot longer. The first part of the mission is, of course, the training. And the bulk of the training takes place at Star City, as it does for the professional astronauts and cosmonauts who fly to the ISS on Soyuz. Star City is right outside of Moscow. It is the place where the Russian Space Agency has conducted training for decades. But since Charles is also a Forbes billionaire and was one of the original people at Microsoft, and after having such success in the business world, ascended to the status of the world's elite and wealthy, he had some special requests. And one of those requests was if he could do some of the training at a place of his own choosing. And so we investigated that, and we were able to actually pull that off for some of the academic training. And so it turned out that his super yacht, which is called SCAT and is pictured here, was also one of the places where Charles trained for his flight. We brought trainers over from Star City, and he did a lot of classroom training and technical training, actually south of Spain in the Mediterranean. So that was interesting. So anyway, I just show you that because we try to make the experience a little bit better for each person who comes along next. And of course, the bulk of the training happened at Star City and with his crew and everything else, but we were able to accommodate his needs a little bit. So I'll show you some photos of what kinds of things he went through. There's a lot of medical testing and evaluation that goes on for people who go to orbit, particularly if you're going to the ISS or as part of a government rocket or space station. And so this was a photo of Charles in the hyperbaric chamber during one of his tests. He was very healthy. He's a pilot. He's actually got thousands of hours as a private pilot, keeps himself very fit, and so the medical was pretty much a breeze for him. This is Charles doing vestibular training. The Russians are very particular about the vestibular system, and they try to train you to withstand movements that might otherwise affect your inner ear and make you sick. And there's a debate about, whether that actually works and how it works, etc. But the fact is that the Russian doctors do quite a bit of this, and Charles didn't get sick at all while he was in space. So he says maybe there's something to this. And while he was preparing for the flight in Baikonur at the Cosmodrome, he spent a lot of time doing vestibular exercises, and it turned out he felt great while he was in space. No problems at all. This is the centrifuge. Several times prior to the launch, the full launch profile is run in terms of G-forces on the candidates before they get on, and so you're fully prepared. He said, actually, he told me when he got back that it was even smoother than he thought. It's only a few Gs, 3 or 4 Gs on launch, maybe a little bit more, and then on reentry it can go up a little bit higher. But it's a very smooth rocket, and so it's something that I think people expect would be worse and harder on the body than it is. Not like the return from the moon on Apollo, where it was up in the 9 or 10 G or more. And this is something that's much more reasonable. Another picture of the centrifuge here. For those of you, maybe some of you have seen Star City. It's the largest centrifuge in the world, and it's quite a sight once you're in that room. Every time they fire that centrifuge up, the lights dim a little bit. It takes a lot of electricity to run it. So this is the Soyuz simulator. A lot of time is spent in the Soyuz simulator. It's a full Soyuz TMA spacecraft at Star City. You spend a lot of time with your crew, with the other trainers working on different simulations and different scenarios, and really feel quite prepared by the time you actually launch. If something were to be abnormal or off nominal, you'd be ready to handle it. And so that inspires confidence and calmness during the launch, which all of our clients have had. Again, this is another simulator. This is the ISS simulator. They spend a lot of time training not only for the things that you do on a daily basis and sort of the alternate scenarios and emergencies and things like that, but also whatever types of experiments and programs that you want to run while you're in space. You have to do the training for that on the ground, of course, as well. So that's what happens there. This is actually a picture of Charles using let's see here. Let me make sure I got the right one. Yeah, this is more training on the ISS module. This is a picture of the crew actually at the RSC Energia production facility that builds the Soyuz TMA spacecrafts. A few months prior to the launch, about halfway through the training, the crew goes to the production facility and gets to meet with all of the different subgroups who are designing and building different parts of the spacecraft. And it's really sort of a checkout. And they talk to the people there, and they interact, and they get to see things, and it's very interesting as well. There's a final checkout while they're at Baikonur, and I'll show you a couple pictures of that. But the process runs like a well-oiled machine. I mean, these Russian Space Agency and their associated design bureau engineers and operations managers have been doing this for a long time, and they've got a very precise checklist and ops manual on how to run the whole program, and it's certainly different than the way others do it, but it's something that works, and it's something that they've been doing for a long time, and every time that rocket goes, you can see the result of it. So this is Charles training for the ham radio. There's an amateur ham radio actually on the International Space Station, which during downtime you can use as much as you like, as long as it doesn't interfere with some other things that they might be doing up there. And so while he was up there, he spent a lot of time talking to schools, to the random operator who could pick up his call sign and signal. And he actually said that was one of the most, unexpectedly, one of the most surprisingly fun things to do, is just catch somebody and talk to him over the radio. And so that was a very interesting part. And previous clients have done the same thing. It's got to be pretty interesting to get a random call from space. So this was the zero gravity training. They spent a lot of time doing this. Actually, the first time Charles did this, he brought his friend Martha Stewart and a group of friends down to our partner company, or one of our partner companies, Zero G Corp, their Zero G 727 down in Florida, where we did that, and that was fun. Got a lot of publicity, and they really had a good time there. That was a year and a half before the space flight. And then in Russia, also, they have an Ilyushin 76 MDK cargo plane, actually a couple of them, that we use for zero gravity training, and you have to go up there and do things with your spacesuit and move around and all that sort of stuff. So that's pretty fun, and you spend a lot of time doing that. There's another shot on the Zero G plane. It's actually a pretty big plane on the inside, and when you've got a cross section that's so wide, you can really do some interesting things up there. This is the water landing training. The Soyuz spacecraft is actually capable of landing pretty much anywhere. It's supposed to land not far from the launch site, within a couple hundred miles in Kazakhstan, and it has for the most part. But in the case that they would need to come back early, or there was an emergency, or something didn't go right, it could land in water, could land in the ocean. And so they have to train for that scenario. And this is a picture of Charles doing the water landing training, which they all have to do as well. This is the final suit checkout. The spacesuit is really a big part of the space flight, and hopefully it won't always be that way. It's expensive and cumbersome, and a bigger portion of the training actually revolves around training on how to use the spacesuit in different situations than you might otherwise think. But for now, it's definitely something that's needed. The Russians use a Sokol KV-2 spacesuit, which is what you're seeing here. And so in the days and months up, coming to the time when they leave for Baikonur, they have to make sure that the spacesuit is working and it's all personalized and customized and set. And in fact, the actual seats that they sit in something called a Kazbek couch. And the molding for the seat is exactly contoured to what their body is inside a spacesuit. So that has to be done several weeks in advance, and they go through that whole process. So when they get in, they're in a completely customized, it's like one of those Tempur-Pedic beds that you just get in. It fits you perfectly. So this is the crew at the Soyuz. I think this is still at the RSC Energia facility in just outside of Moscow. And now we're going to head to Baikonur. This is a picture of the launch vehicle integration hangar at the Baikonur Cosmodrome, which is in the middle of Kazakhstan. And you can see here the same launch vehicle body, the rockets, are used for the manned Soyuz missions and the unmanned Progress missions, relatively the same. And in fact, there are also other unmanned missions that aren't Progress resupply spacecraft that are launching satellites and things like that on the Soyuz U boosters. So they build a lot of these. These are built pretty fast. There's an assembly line. It's a liquid-fueled, liquid oxygen kerosene system. They've flown it, from the starting with the R7 booster at the very beginning of the space age in 1957. This is relatively the same evolution that's gone all the way up. And so there have been a couple thousand of these flights, if not more, on this vehicle. Of course, not all of them manned, but it's the same system. It's pretty neat to see this. This is the spacecraft integration facility. So once they get the rocket with the boosters on the side put on, and they put the fairing on and everything else, then they'll do one final inspection of the spacecraft and then mate it to the rocket, which I think we're going to see next. So you can see on the back is the booster, the first stage with the strap-ons, then the second stage tank, and then on the right, you can see the spacecraft, which is already inside the fairing with the casing around it, and then the escape tower, of course, which is an essential part of that system, which makes it a pretty safe system comparatively to be flying. This is Charles and his crew just on the last day before they mate the spacecraft with the rocket. This is the rocket being rolled out to the launch pad. The Russians use a train. They lay it on its side, and the launch pad's probably 2.5 miles away from building 254, which is the final building that the rocket comes out of. And as it rolls out to the launch pad, it takes a couple of hours, and they'll just literally set it up vertically by moving it through a 90-degree angle. And they pop it up, and I think we have a picture of that next, actually. Here it is. The same launch pad that launched Yuri Gagarin is the one that Charles launched from. They have a couple of actually have several other launch pads there, but this is the one they use for the Soyuz manned missions. And so it's pretty interesting to know that if you were going to fly, you'd be flying from the same place the very first person who ever went to space launched from. So this is Charles about 24 hours before launch. When you go to the Cosmodrome, about I'd say 6 or 7 days before the launch, you then are in medical quarantine. So you can only be around people who are also in quarantine and who have been checked to make sure that they're not sick or ill or have anything that would give you a nasty cold or flu while you're in the space station. And so he gets to see all of us. We had his friends and his brother and his family and a lot of people there, but you've got to do it behind a glass wall. And so there's microphones and everything, and we get to spend some time. So it's kind of adds to the ceremony and the seriousness of the whole thing, and it's a lot of fun. He was telling us stories about some of the things he'd learned and what he was doing and what was going through his head, and it was an exciting time. This was just right the day before the launch. The day before the launch, also before they fueled up the rocket, we got to go out and see the stack sitting there. They do the fueling just right before, a few hours beforehand. And so here was a picture of the group while we were there. This was the afternoon of. One very unique thing about this flight, it was an evening launch. It was at 11:31 p.m. on April 7th, Baikonur time, was actually the actual launch minute. And normally, for the past 10 years, the Soyuz launches that have been going to the space station, either ISS or Mir, have launched in the morning. So, I've been to a lot of them, and you get sort of in a tradition of you get up really early, and then you go to the thing, and then right as the sun comes up, there's a couple hours to go. And so this would have been this moment probably 4 hours before the launch, when they leave the place where they're staying and everybody waves goodbye and they're going to get their suits on and go out to the rocket. Would normally happen before dawn, but in this case it happened in the evening. And there was a lot of press there and a lot of friends and family. It was really exciting, and he was very excited and calm. You train so much for these flights that all of my clients have said, everybody always asks them, were you scared, were you nervous? Not at all. This is the second or third time that Charles uses the analogy of a movie. He says, during my training, I saw the movie the first two times, and now it's the third time, and I get to enjoy all the little detail. And he's ready for everything, and he feels like he, has been very well prepared, so that it maximizes his ability to enjoy the experience. This is a picture, I guess, probably 2 hours before the flight. This is the last photo before they get in the rocket. There's just a normal staircase. You go up, you get in a gantry elevator, takes you all the way up, and it takes probably half an hour for the launch operations team to strap you into the seats and make sure everything's set, close the door, and then everyone backs away and the whole thing starts. So this was the launch. As I mentioned, it was a night launch. Really spectacular to watch a night launch. I know I've seen many shuttle launches also, and the night launches were my favorite. It's no different here, actually. We were just amazed by it. It really just lights up the whole sky like a star rising. And I don't think there was a person with us who wasn't just blown away, really. It was very exciting. So this was the launch. Again, April 7th, 11:31 p.m. Within 8 minutes, he was in orbit. This is the Soyuz approaching the space station. I think it's a picture taken from the space station as the Soyuz approaches. Space station is waiting for the new permanent crew to come in, and of course Charles would be there for just a short period of time while the old crew then prepares to go home. So this was a picture taken inside the Soyuz. The Soyuz itself, relatively small, the size probably of an SUV, maybe a big one. Certainly bigger than some of the early spacecraft, but you're in there for a day and a half to 2 days and anxious to get to the space station, which is very large after the flight. This was a picture taken out one of the windows of the Soyuz as they were approaching the station. This was a picture of Charles and his KV-2 suit once I think he was inside the space station, and so just had a great time. We have an agreement with NASA, actually, who runs the broadband services to the International Space Station, and NASA's been very easy and really great to work with on that particular issue and helped us a lot. And so Charles is able, all of our clients are able to send and receive email. They're able to actually use the IP phone, so they can call people from the space station, which is really cool. And so while he was up there, we were getting updates pretty constantly of what he was thinking, what he was doing, pictures, and all the different things. One very special thing that he did. This is a picture of the ISS. As many of you know, it's very big. The statistics, I think, right now, it's 471,000 pounds, so 15,000 cubic feet. Very large. But one of the things that Charles did, which was a lot of fun, this is the crew, the expedition crew that was on the station before they arrived. Sunita Williams on the left from NASA, Michael Lopez Allegra in the center, and Misha Turin on the right. Well, they'd been up there for 6 months, and so it's a lot of work. I mean, spaceflight is fun, but it's also a lot of work, especially if you're up there for such a long time. So Charles decided, with his friend Martha Stewart, and also Alain Ducasse, who many of you may know is a very well-known gourmet chef of the highest order, to bring a gourmet meal for the crew. So he used some of his very scarce and valuable weight allotment to bring a very special 5-course meal to the crew members, which they heartily enjoyed, as I understand it, and so won some some goodie points, I guess, with the guys who were up there working so hard. So they did that. They were happy to have them. They had a lot of fun up there. They took a lot of pictures and video, which is all being put together into a really nice video, which will be available in a few months, and really just generally had a great time. This is a picture of all of them. Charles in the middle, of course, his 2 crew members in the gray on either side, and then the ones who've been up there for 6 months behind them. One funny thing, some of you may remember that Misha Turin, a few months ago, actually hit a golf ball off the space station. There was a company that sponsored an activity where he went out. They theoretically figured out all the orbital mechanics in such a way that there was no possible chance of the golf ball hitting anything, which it didn't, to my knowledge. But anyway, he went out, and while he was doing an EVA, he took a swing and hit the ball, and so they have a golf club up there, of course. So this was a picture of Charles with the honorable ISS, golf club, 1-hour membership, and including the orange coat, which is a requirement of membership. So overall, it was a lot of fun. He really had a great time. He did a lot of experiments also. He was working very closely with the European Space Agency, which we hooked him up with, and was continuing their research on circulatory and spinal research, and he spent quite a bit of time on biomedical stuff. But of course, he is a tourist, and he's a civilian traveler, and his objective is not to be a professional, which he respects greatly and knows that he is not a professional, and decided that he just wanted to do what little he could to promote private space travel, to try to get others to go, which is, of course, a goal that we in the industry love, and has agreed, over the next few years to help all of us find more clients and try to tell people that spaceflight is really an incredible thing, which it is. So that's Charles's flight. This is, I think, one final picture just before the Soyuz undocked. You can see, of course, how beautiful the Earth is. I know many of us, all of us who haven't been, just can't wait to see that when we finally get to go up there and look at the Earth from such a beautiful vantage point. This is the landing. After the flight was over, they land, right after the landing, they have a picture here of the Kazakh desert. In the background, actually, the beautiful woman in the brown jacket you might recognize as Anusha Ansari, who was our previous client and was there to welcome home her launch crew, which were Misha Turin and Michael Lopez Alegre, the 2 gentlemen on the right. So quite a bond they developed in space and training for it. And I think Charles probably would go back and see his crew come home next fall also. So overall, again, very good. The question everyone wants to ask is, was it worth it? It's such an extremely expensive proposition. Was it worth it? And so, of course, he was asked that several times since then, and he said not only was it worth it, it was really one of the best things I ever did, and worth every penny. And that makes me really excited, because if it was, if it's to do something that big, that's that expensive, when it becomes less expensive, and when there are, however many years from now, lots of different ways to get to space that are cheaper, hopefully there'll be many, many, many more people who want to do it, and we'll be able to really move things forward. So that's a little bit about Charles Simony's flight. I'm happy to answer any questions or... anything else you might want to know? Yes?
You think of space, you think of exact timing and all that. How is it that the extra 2 days? You think you have a scheduled time for departure to the International Space Station and get back to the
The question was that the space business is known, particularly human spaceflight, is known for exact timing, and why
the timing needs to be so exact. Would there be an opportunity for him to stay a couple of extra days up there? And the answer is that it is very exact, but there are many windows for both launch and landing that happen, over certain periods of time. And for example, with shuttle launches, the shuttle launching from Cape Canaveral has to have a very exact launch in order to go to a different inclination from that which it is, it's a more northern inclination. And yet, there are different launch windows every day when those cross over. And so it didn't mean that he could land any time 2 days later. It meant that they had to precisely plan when in the next couple of days they could do that, and they just decided to do that for operational reasons. And so he was the beneficiary in getting an extra 2 days in space, which he was very happy about, by the way. Yes?
Anusha, your last client, I know got really, really sick. What was the difference in training between, did Anusha go through the exact same training on that little vibrator seat that Charles did?
Well, she didn't get really, really sick. She had some space sickness when she was in the Soyuz for about the first 18 hours. After about 18 hours, she was fine. And she moved around quicker probably than she should have right after they were in weightlessness. And she had some Phenergan when she was up there. They gave her some Phenergan, and that sort of made her sleep for a while. And when she woke up, she felt a lot better. I think that was a bit over dramatized, but there's no doubt that you can get sick when you go to space. And so the key thing as far as really opening up private space travel, one of the key things will be to reduce that through trial and error and knowledge and process and medicine and everything else. One good thing, the zero-G flights that are now available here in the United States have really, there's less than 1% really who get sick on those flights now. And when they first started, it was more. And so there's things that you can do to reduce that. And as we go on with more and more private spaceflight, I'm sure that we're going to find more and more ways to help people not get sick so they can enjoy the experience more. John?
When's your next flight?
Next flight will be next year. And we have the person who's going to go, but we haven't yet disclosed their name. But we will. It'll be another exciting one. It'll be another first. Yes?
I don't mean to space, but I mean for the party, Esther bragging about the party.
Well, every time there's a launch, we have a group of people who go with us to watch it, and be happy to bring anybody along. It's a lot of fun.
Worth every penny.
Thank you. Let's see, over here. How much is it? The flight's $25 million. The tag-along. Oh, I don't remember. 10,000, something like that.
More than that.
15,000. I'll give you the NSS discount. It depends. Here in the middle.
You mentioned something that I didn't know anything about, the golf ball has been put off. Talk more about that and what they did to make sure it wasn't.
I actually am not an expert on that. The question was about the golf ball that was hit off the space station, and I don't know too much about it, actually. I just know that it was something that had been talked about for a long time, and the company, I want to say E3, or is that right? I can't remember. Anyway, they wanted to talk about how their golf ball is the greatest ever, and that it has now traveled millions of miles, and so that's what they did. But it was kind of a just a gimmicky type thing, but that's all I know.
Some people have noted Charles's likeness to Pee Wee Herman.
I don't think I know the first. Yes?
What are the prospects for adding EVA to one of these trips, and if you see any truly insurmountable hurdles for you to achieve that?
So that's certainly a possibility. The question was about the ability for private citizens to do spacewalks, to do an EVA from as a sort of an add-on to the expedition. And the answer is that is possible. It requires more training. It requires more money, clearly. And it requires the approval of the different space agencies who are involved. But preliminarily, we absolutely see that it's possible. And so just, someone would have to be very careful. But actually, interestingly, both of the Russians who were flying with Charles were asked the question, if you were, this was before the launch, they said if you were on a flight where someone wanted to do an EVA, would you be in favor of that? And they both said, actually, yeah, we would, as long as they were trained enough. We don't see any problem with it. And as I understand it, being able to do an EVA is kind of a, well, I won't say the holy grail, but it's a real treat in terms of space flight. And so for a private citizen to be able to go up there and not have a real job, but just kind of be able to stand outside, if you can call it standing, the space station and look back at the Earth for an hour or so, that would be a great thing to hear about on the way, when they came back for all the rest of us, and that would certainly do a lot to promote private space travel. So I hope we can make that happen. Yes?
How is the Russian partnership going? We wonder now, since the Russian economy is doing so well, whether they will branch out from their existing relationship.
The question was about the partnership with the Russians, and the answer is okay. The Soyuz right now is the only way to commercially go to orbit, and so the price goes up, which happens, but the economy of the world goes up too, and we're always looking for other ways that we can get people to space eventually. But again, as Esther mentioned, we're really trying to make business right now. We're trying to get more and more people up to do this. So we've worked with the Russians successfully. We're confident we'll continue to do so in the future. And the reality is they make really good space stuff, and they're good at it. And so we're happy to work with them, and we've had good experience so far. Maybe two more questions, right, George? Okay. Here in the blue jacket.
Can you comment on plans for suborbital or lunar?
Okay, the question was about Space Adventures' plans for suborbital and for lunar. So on the suborbital front, I'd actually, we've had a lot of announcements in the past, and people know that we've been working on different things, but I prefer not to comment too much on that right now, actually. We are still working on it. Everything costs more and takes longer. So we'll see. But we think suborbital flight is really a fantastic experience. We are definitely still working on it with a great amount of diligence. But at this point, we'll probably not talk about it too much publicly for a while. So, but that doesn't mean we're not working on it. So. I'm sorry?
No, I asked you.
Oh, and the lunar program. So another very exciting program. The idea is, of course, to use the Soyuz, the existing Soyuz spacecraft, to do a circumlunar flight. And we've made a lot of progress on that. It's a $100 million expedition. So it's a different order, even than an orbital flight. And I have a few people who are interested, and we're literally working with them and hope to work with them over the next few months to get them to commit so we could really pull that one off, which would be remarkable. I think that would really be a big thing. We're so really looking forward to that. One more question. Yes?
I was very much told to highlight the issue of operations. Because yesterday the papers they were talking about hardware, software, but they have forgotten about operations, how important they are. With respect to the lunar, how far the operations?
Well, the lunar mission is, because it uses existing hardware, and because it's a known mission. It's something that the Russians have planned for, we've planned for. The real key there is signing up the customers. And anytime you've got a $100 million seat price, it adds a layer of, there's a lot of stuff that needs to happen before that deal gets inked. So once we have the customers signed up and finalized, and I've said this in a lot of interviews over the past year, we have a few people who are interested. We really think it's going to happen, but it's not done yet. So as soon as it's done, believe me, we'll be off to the races, and we'll be very excited about doing that. So I guess that's all. Thank you very much. It's always enjoyable.